Because I was talking to a company that supplies plants, orchids and things to supermarkets.
Okay.
And they were saying, well, it wouldn't work for us because our customers are so big that you can't have an individual. Although you supply people like Smith's Industries, who are huge, don't you?
Yeah, we supply direct to aircraft manufacturers.
Yeah.
Which tend to be large companies.
Yeah.
International.
So that's fine. So I'm thinking if they were doing their plant thing, they buy in plants, but they also grow plants. And I'm thinking one person, or perhaps a group of, say, 3, could do the growing and the buying in. They could go and see Sainsbury's or Tesco's or whoever, Waitrose, and they could go and talk to them and look after them as customers. Perhaps they could do... But you could have maybe one person who talks to Waitrose because they don't want to deal with lots of people within the company. And then behind that one person could be all these different groups who each are growing a different type of plant. Is that how it would work, do you think?
Joe, I would... For any organisation transitioning, the idea would be to keep as much stability as possible. So for me, it would be having the normal faces arriving at the supermarket with an additional person, and that additional person would be somebody who was from perhaps a different department or production department, learning the ropes, and eventually there would be another point of contact, but critically there would be a point of contact within the production facility rather than within just the sales team.
Yes.
So that's the sort of transition I would imagine. So there's no sudden change where people say, "Oh, this new person isn't very capable in sales contracting," for example.
Yes.
There's 2 types of sales, aren't we? And there's what I call looking after the customer sales, which is basically processing the order through and things like that, and maybe a little bit of price negotiation, but under a bigger contract umbrella.
Yeah,
that's one type. And the other type is the sort of new business development type, where you're actually out prospecting for new business. And, ultimately you can have an internal relationship, an internal contract between parties. If you, for instance, as a production guy, and you want to get more business into your line, you may pay somebody to do some prospecting for you. Whereas you may say, well, I'm quite happy to handle the customer I've got now, and visit him and say, what would you like, and how do we process the orders more efficiently? But that's different. 2 different roles there.
Yeah. How would you use the wider supply chain in your world to get more work? You might think of paying a marketing agency, a digital marketing agency.
Yeah.
Just all the choices that you have are available to an organisation that's arranged fractally.
Yeah.
And some of them may be internal suppliers. That would be the regional sales team.
Yeah.
And some of them may be external suppliers. That may be a marketing agency. And some may be new people coming in who are multi-skilled. So really, it's not a matter of saying, this is your only option. It's a matter of saying, well, if we did it differently and if we wanted to multi-skill people, how would that look?
So it's not a problem if somebody is watching this and thinking, well, it wouldn't work for us because we've got a really big customer. That's not a problem.
It's not a problem. Or a big supplier, or large pieces of capital equipment.
Yeah, because you can share the piece of capital equipment. You just hire it for the hours you want it for in the sort of internal market.
There's always a solution to these things. The question is having the imagination to think of an organisation rearranged.
Yeah.
Split up by outcomes rather than by verbs, by processes.
And then you've got... and it's got to be split up into areas where they can then have their own profit and loss. I mean, I know you're also doing it by outcome, but I'm thinking the outcome needs to be something that you're actually selling and you're actually buying things for, and you've got labour that's known, so you can actually have your own profit and loss. I mean, that's the real objective, isn't it?
So the having an outcome, the nice thing about that is you've got a critical recipient at the other end who's very interested in quality and who's paying for the...
Yeah, which could be the customer, or it could be an internal... representative of the customer, as it were.
Yes, we've had problems with that in the past, having that internal representative, because those social relationships tend to build to the point where there's a lot of stories about why it isn't quite as good this time, but you should accept it.
Yeah.
Whereas that doesn't work with the customer.
Because in the farm, you had a sort of, I can't remember what you call it, like a packing shed or something.
That's
they,
right, yeah.
They all sold their stuff to the packing shed, which was like their customer.
Yes.
But the packing shed has to be ruthless and not take stuff that's not quite good enough this week or whatever.
That's right. That's right. And
Which is fine, by the way, if the customer then refuses in the packing shed, so they're left with it, and they soon
Yeah,
change
the
their
packing shed
behaviours.
soon
Yeah.
Not to take
Not to take that.
So that should all work. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking actually in this plant thing, they have a new product department where they don't invent new plants, but they invent new ways of presenting them. So for Halloween, they had little plants that sort of looked like pumpkins or whatever, and they were in a pot that was shaped like a bat.
Yeah,
and they had this idea they could sell that. And I'm thinking, the person could have that idea. They could go and see the customer. If the customer kind of likes it, they could talk to suppliers, China or wherever, that's going to make the little pots. And then they could order in the plants and pay get the people to assemble it or do it themselves. And then ship them out to Marks and Spencer's. And all of that little bit could be done as a separate little sub-business which could have its own profit and loss. And I could imagine that working really well and not really disturbing the rest of the company at all, because it's a new product that they've come up with.
So you could split it by runners, fast-moving, repeaters, medium-moving, and strangers, slow-moving.
Yeah.
There's another, way of...
Runners, repeaters and strangers I've heard before.
But I like your idea there, because what you're doing is you're saying do an experiment whose fallout won't be catastrophic.
Yes.
Right.
The worst that will happen is they won't sell the pumpkin bat design.
Yeah. And that would have happened anyway.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with that. Take easy steps that you can play with to a great extent,
yes,
but don't have a critical impact on the rest of the organisation. There's one other thing I'd say is for a lot of businesses I've come across which say, oh, we couldn't do that, or our business isn't like that. If you go back far enough in their past, that was exactly how they were.
Must have started somewhere.
Yeah,
and I'm sure these plant people who now make hundreds of thousands a day, there must have just been a bloke in a greenhouse, saying, I've got some roses, do you want to buy them or whatever? They must have started.
Yeah, multi-skilled. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing we've seen time and time again is if you go back to that original organisation, the sales per person are often higher.
Yes.
They're always higher. Not often.
Bound to be.
I've never met, never on one occasion found the sales not to be higher when you work your way back.
Well, some of the contracts they've had recently have been really difficult because the supermarkets are so tough. They're a nightmare to deal with. They've been making virtually no profit from some supermarkets. And you think, well, when it was just a bloke in his greenhouse, I bet he was making a profit.
Yep.
So it could well be that he made more profit than the whole company does now, doing hundreds of thousands of plants a day.
Now,
so you could see how that could.
But what is the bureaucratic
be
what's the bureaucratic drag within the existing, that complex structure?
Yeah.
So you say they're not making money. Let's say they're not.
Well, there's an
money.
admin office full of people.
And they say you've got an admin. I don't know how much that costs to run, but if you didn't have that, you'd make money.
Yes.
So the problem they might have is that the price the supermarkets are willing to pay is the market price. And they say they're not making a profit.
So they can't charge more.
But that's because of their costs.
Now
it could be another supplier with lower costs can make a profit.
Yeah.
So they're not comparing market costs. They're comparing market prices. And now they've got to say perhaps our costs are too high.
Yeah.
And that was really one of the primary motivations for us to change, is our costs were escalating and our prices weren't.
Yeah, and if you got rid of the admin department, you'd have mayhem. But if you changed the whole model to what we're doing, you could do it without the admin people and it wouldn't be mayhem.
So
because each bit would be a self-governing part.
Yep.
So I just...